Jeff, please join me up here. Mr. Jeff Hayes. Thank you. You got the thing. Here's the thing. There you go. Thank you very much. Give it up for Mark, everybody. He wrote a seal. I am excited to be here. I am excited for you because we are going to have a very good time here together. We are actually going to talk today about generational differences in the workplace, which is a phrase that I know that you're probably sick of hearing. How many of you have had to suffer through a conversation about generational talks at work at some point in your professional life? Few of you, right? And I know what you hear, right? Today's workplace is vibrant and diverse, and you need to accommodate people with different kinds of learning styles. And I am here to tell you that I don't want you to make accommodations to people. The world's a lot better when you don't. You don't have to change what you're doing. You don't have to listen to anybody's opinion. Besides, and this is the real thesis of what we're going to talk about today, in everything that we do, in every game that we play, in every election that we hold, and in every decision you have ever made about how to allocate resources and compete professionally, there are winners and there are losers. I think we can all agree on that. And what that means is that some of the people you work with are losers. And that's what we're going to focus on today, okay? It's going to be a little different than what you're accustomed to. I know that you have heard that for the first time in the global workplace, there are 4 generations operating side by side. That is not true. It is a lie. It is a destructive lie, and we're going to bury it today. But before we get to it, we have to go to where you are. So let's cover the 4-generation crap that you've been taught, all right? First, we have the matures, born between 1922 and 1946. Their favorite medicines are whiskey and cod liver oil. The worse it tastes, the better it must be for your digestive health. Their favorite pastimes are complaining about all of their physical problems and yelling at children that run across their lawn. He would be a terrifying neighbor. These people drive 18 miles an hour below the speed limit, and they always let you know they're turning 3 miles before it happens and 93 miles after that. They go to bed at 8 p.m., and you can find them in groups whenever there's a Denny's or a Cracker Barrel or a walking club at the mall. But do not underestimate this generation of people. They invented 3 martini lunches, all right? They can drink the rest of you under the table. You got your beach party tonight. If you're playing beer pong, get them on your team. They're killer. So that's them. Next, we have the baby boomers. And where are the baby boomers? There have to be some of you. Yay! Yeah, or as I like to call you, dirty, filthy hippies. Do not forget your roots, baby boomers. Born between 1946 and 1964, your favorite medicine actually used to be LSD, which some of you tried to put into our water. Now, though, your favorite medicine is different. It has changed, you know. I know, there's a lot of those pills out there. Anyway, yours was the first generation that decided razors and deodorant were somehow oppressive, which means that some of the world's most successful companies are currently being run by people that didn't shower in college. You guys invented disco, for which I will never forgive you. That was an atrocity. It was a crime against humanity. And you also invented generations X and Y, although a lot of you have tried to pretend you had nothing to do with them. Next, we have Generation X. This is my people. Where are the Gen Xers out there? Yes! We were called the slacker generation, which I think is hilarious considering the generation that came after us. Yes, I said it. Born between 1965 and 1980, our favorite medicine is angst, which isn't even medicine. It's just a whiny, pouty, bitchy way of looking at things. Our whole philosophy is tell me anything you're proud of, I'll tell you it's not that big a deal. Or if you want us in one word, that's our whole generation. Whatever, man. We rebelled against the crazy, stupid fashions of those disco hippies by coming up with the 1980s, which I think we can all agree was inexplicably worse. We were the first generation of people to truly believe nobody understands me, and the less people understand me, the cooler I am. There is no good explanation for how we even made it into adulthood, except that cynicism doesn't kill anybody, so here we are. And in case you forgot, we gave you rap music. You are welcome, old people. And I, by the way, had this haircut right here. So That's us. And then last but certainly not least, the tech-savvy Generation Y. Where are the millennials? There have to be some of them. Do you let them work here? Yes. All right. Born after 1980, you people are barely old enough to shave. Your favorite medicine, which everybody knows, is Ritalin, which I'm pretty sure has been put into your cereal. But hey, let's give these kids credit, all right? They knew college was going to be expensive. So when they were young, they got diagnosed with ADD so that when they got to college, they could sell all that extra Adderall to their friends as a study aid. Now, this is the first generation that's always had the internet. They've always had 500 channels of television. And I don't know if you older folks really appreciate what that means about them. That means that none of them have ever developed film and been disappointed when 90% of it turned out to be crap. They've never made a mixtape for anyone, painstakingly arranging the songs in an order to best express your love. They do things like this because they can't be bothered to watch where they're driving. I mean, seriously, they're barely even people. So, this is what you've been taught. The matures, the boomers, Gen X, Gen Y, or as I like to call them, really old people that don't think that they're old people, whiny people who can't decide if they're old or young people, and tiny little baby people. That is our world. But if you've heard anybody talk about generational issues at work, then they tell you this, but they give you like different characteristics, and then they give you this chart, right? And so you have your 4 generations, and none of these qualities overlap with any others, and then this chart just keeps going and going and going. And then somebody says, okay, now you know who you work with, manage that. How are you supposed to manage this? This is impossible. You can't work this way because it is impossible to be in one generation simultaneously fighting against 3 completely different types of people. A 2-front war is a bad idea. A 3-front war is impossible. And the reason this doesn't work, the reason it frustrates you, the reason it's overcomplicated is because it's not how our brains operate. We don't divide things into 4s. We divide everything into 2s. We have men against women, Republicans against Democrats, paper versus plastic, Axis versus allies, Team Edward versus Team Jacob. That's what we do. Every single thing we do, we divide into 2s. So we're going to get this down to a dichotomy that you can actually operate in, because there are only 2 buckets you have ever put anybody you work with into. Your customers, your colleagues, there's only 2 places they go. They are either young people or old people. That's all there is. When you're having a problem with someone that you work with and you attribute it to a generational difference of opinion, you have never said, well, I am a baby boomer with some traditionalist sensibilities trying to understand the subtle nuances of the Gen X and Gen Y mind. You don't say that. You just say that punk kid has no idea. Or that old fart should just retire. That's what we say. And today is about honesty, okay? So now you know there's only 2 generations. Now we're going to help you figure out which one you're a part of, okay? And I'm going to tell you because I have developed a foolproof, comprehensive 11-question quiz to help you decide once and for all if you are a young or an old person. Now you don't need to write anything down, but I do want you to keep track of how many times you answer A and how many times you answer B to the following 11 questions. Every answer is either A or B, all right? So take tick marks on a piece of paper or count them on your fingers. I don't really care, but I do need you to have these numbers for later. So are you a young or an old person? You are about to figure this out. Here we go. Question number 1. Have you ever used a computer that required you to put a thing called a disk into a thing called a disk drive? You are a disgrace, sir. Yes, or I don't recognize those words. Write these down, keep your numbers. We're going to need them for later. Question 2, do you now or have you ever owned an 8-track tape? Yes, I heard a woo, or what the hell are you talking about? Because there's some little baby people that legitimately don't know. Question 3, when you see the words Foursquare, what is the first thing that comes into your mind? An outdoor game, or maybe some wholesome barn dancing, or a form of social media, which I don't think is around anymore, but it used to exist. Anyway, question number 4, my typical weekend bedtime. Not typical here in the Bahamas bedtime. Typical weekend bedtime is closer to 6 p.m. or 6 a.m. It's a very easy question, and the divide is right there at midnight, so I could have said 11 p.m. and 1 a.m., but I picked 6 and 6 to make the old people feel sad. Question number 5, keep track of your answers. Do you have any idea at all what a party line used to be? Of course I do. Or I'm trying to figure out why the people around me are laughing. I know some of you young people are like, party line, is that cocaine? Like, no, it's not. It's a different thing. Has to do with phones. Ask an old person. Okay. Question 6. In the last 6 months, have you sent a handwritten letter of any kind in the mail? Yes. Or I thought mailboxes were only for getting packages from Amazon. Question 7. Do you occasionally walk from one room of your house to another, get where you were going, and then forget why you wanted to be there in the first place? It's a simple question, yes or no question. Don't be disappointed if you're a yes. I've been this way since I was like 12, so it's not that big a deal. Question 8, do you remember when John F. Kennedy, Martin Luther King, or Ronald Reagan got shot? Yes, or who are those people? Question 9, has a horse ever been your primary mode of transportation? Very simple question. Yes or no there. Okay, keep track of your answers. We need these for later. Only 2 more to go. Question 10 is a music question. Madonna covered American Pie, Sheryl Crow covered Sweet Child of Mine, and Darius Rucker covered Wagon Wheel. How does that make you feel? They're butchering the classics and should be shot! Or they're breathing new life into crappy oldies. And question 11, and be honest with this one because it's not A for everybody, all right? And don't be honest with me, I don't care about that. Be honest with yourself. If you had to wait in a line for something, which of the following would be a more important line for you to wait in? Food and water or the next iPhone? Because I know some of you are like, I will concede that food and water sustains life, but what is the point without an iPhone? So, okay. We now have all 11 questions. You should now have your answers. But before we get to analyzing the results, is there anybody here by any miracle who answered B to every single question? There are 0 A's and 11 B's. No, of course not. Those people can't feed themselves. You shouldn't employ them. So I'm glad that you don't. On the other hand, is there anybody here by any chance who answered A to all 11 questions? 11 A's, 0 B's. No, there never is. I keep waiting to find that person. If you know anybody who'd be 11 A's, let me know. I have an award for them, the Congratulations for Still Being Alive award, because the reason I have it is because I have a prize that I think only they would appreciate, which is a full set of Encyclopedia Britannicas. All the best knowledge of 1982. I found it in my mom's basement. I want to ship it to someone who'd like it. So if you know anybody, just let me know, and I'll pay for shipping, which will cost like $4,000, because knowledge from the 80s was heavy. But there's a lot of interesting S stuff. There were 2 whole S volumes. I mean, it's really fascinating. The S's are great. Anyway, as expected, we're all somewhere in the middle, right? Nobody's all the way old. Nobody's all the way young. We're all somewhere in the middle. But if we're going to have a fight, and I know you're already fighting with each other, we need to have a cutoff so that we can divide up the armies effectively, and that cutoff is going to be 6. So if you answered A to 6 or more questions, who answered A to 6 or more questions? Show of hands. Come on. You are the old people! Congratulations! Any day now, your AARP card is going to come in the mail. If it hasn't already, you get ready to enjoy 10% discounts on omelets and some of the finest parking spaces in the world. And when we get done here today, call your doctor and make an appointment to get your hips checked out, okay? Because one of them is about to go. On the other hand, if you answered B to 6 or more questions, show of hands, who would that be? There are some of them. You are the young people. Any day now, your baby teeth are going to fall out, and you're going to get braces. You have the patience of a gnat or a mayfly. I don't really know. It's just a comparison with something that dies really fast. You are the reason that bottled water and $5 cups of coffee exist. Because before you came along, those things were free. We lived in a utopia of free water and coffee. You will pay double for anything called organic, including a plastic bag. And soon, if everything works out right, you're going to move out of your parents' basement into a place of your very own. And I am very excited for you because it's so grown-up feeling to pay your own rent. So anyway, okay. As expected, like I said, we're not all in the same categories. You now know which part you are in. And I already know what you think about the people who are in the other camp from you because the stereotypes are very similar and they don't really change. If you are an old person and you have a problem with a young worker, I know what you think about them. You think they're lazy, they're entitled, they're unmotivated, they are more interested in playing online than they are in being productive, they're incapable of being trusted with important decisions, which is easy for you to prove to yourself just by looking at some of the tattoos they have decided to get. You may as well just write, "I don't want a good job," right there on your neck. In calligraphy with flames coming up it. And if you're a young person and you have a problem with your old colleagues, I know what you think about them. They're out of touch. They're stuck in their ways. They're terrified of change. They don't like any idea they didn't think of themselves, and they're technologically incompetent, which is easy for you to prove to yourself just by asking them how many remotes they have by their home television, because it's more than one, because they can't figure out how to make it all work in the same device. That's why there's 4 of them on the end table right there by the sofa. I know what you think about each other, and so now, before we start fighting, and we did this perfect, there's a divide right here, so we'll get the young people here and the old people here, and we'll pick a champion, and you'll cut each other up. It'll be neat. But before the bloodshed, how did it get to be this way? Why is everyone the way they are? Sun Tzu says in The Art of War that if you want to defeat your enemy, you must first know your enemy. So why are all the old people you work with so old and boring? And why are all the young people you work with so evil and broken? Well, we're first going to start talking about the young people, okay? There are a lot of reasons to explain why they are the way they are. I mean, there's Jersey Shore, for example. That would screw anybody up. There's video games. There's Maury Povich. I mean, to a certain extent, can we even really blame them for the way they are when this is how they were raised? You know, hey, Mom, Maury taught me today that probably everyone is my dad. I mean, that's just ridiculous. But more importantly, there is a fundamental difference between today's young people and the young people that all of us old people used to be. I'm an old person, by the way. I'm 8 on the quiz. And that difference really does get at explaining why they act and behave the way they do. And here's the best way I know to summarize that difference. Despite all evidence to the contrary, and I think this is true in every developed world, it is true in every market in which you play, despite all appearances to the contrary, the members of today's young set are the members of the loneliest generation that has ever lived on this planet. They are lonelier than frontiers people that didn't have neighbors for 15 miles. The example of people texting while sitting on the couch next to one another is a very good instance of that. And the reason for that, and I hope I can make this make sense to you, is actually because of the internet, because of our hyperconnectivity, and how it has paradoxically made it more difficult for people to connect to an actual real community and find a place to belong. Has anybody here ever heard of the concept called Dunbar's number? Has anybody ever heard that term before? Most people have not. Dunbar's number is an attempt to quantify how many other human beings you are able to care about at any given time. What is the space you have in your head, the neurological capacity? What is it that we have for others? And Dunbar's number, if you look it up, is 150. Different researchers will suggest somewhere between 100 and 300, but Robin Dunbar is the guy who started this in the 1990s. It's named after him. If you Google it, you'll find 150. So the idea is all of us have roughly 150 spots in our head for other people, and at that point, when new people come in, old people go away because we just can't fit that many anymore. And there's a lot of evidence to suggest that this number is very, very close to true. The average size of a Neolithic farming village is estimated from archaeological records to have been about 150 people. The average size of an 18th century English town is proven from county records to be 150 people. The average size of a Roman military company was 150. The average size of an American military company is 160. The largest wedding you've ever been to is probably not much more than 300, which is 150 for both marrying parties. And Facebook did this study. Regardless of the number of people in your social network, on Facebook at least, you only talk to about 150 of them. So there's a lot of evidence to suggest that all of us are looking for about 150 people that make us feel like we belong somewhere, that give us a sense of place and a sense of purpose and a sense of value. And what is important is the way that we used to find those 150 people versus the way that we're finding them today. Because you older folks, myself as well, grew up in an era without constant connections. All of the Gen Xers did too as well. That's part of the reason that we sometimes don't know where we fit, because we straddled the technological revolution, and it was undeniably a revolution. I'll bet many of you have actually forgotten that there was a time in your life when you answered the phone by saying hello, like it was a question, because it was. You didn't know who was calling. It was a surprise. It could be your mom, it could be the police, you just didn't know. I remember the mile-long phone cord in the kitchen, so you could talk in 2 whole rooms of your house. You could be in the kitchen and lean in to watch TV. You couldn't change a channel because you didn't have a remote. You just had a 12-channel chunker thingy, and it had a U on it that never had a show. What the hell was the U even for? It was just squiggles that never resolved into a picture. And then we got our first sense of mobility, the 35-pound car console phone. a World War II sat phone they bolted to the armrest of the minivan. When this thing debuted, anybody who's complained about iPhone prices, this thing cost $3,995, and that's in like 1984 money. Weighed 8.8 pounds, had a 30-minute battery life. If thieves broke into your car, they left it. It was too heavy to run away with. And then we got the internet, and young people, you have no idea how good your life has always been. Because for a decade, every old person in the world used the internet like this. Don't pick up the phone, please. I just want to check my email. It should just take 17 minutes to log on, and then everything I want to look at is going to load line by freaking line. So for any of you young people who complain about slow download speeds, shut your mouth. You don't know pain the way that we know pain, right? But anyway, this is what happened to us. We got our technology in pieces. We got it in fits and starts. Every 5 years or so, a new thing had come on. You wanted to take a video, you needed a full VHS recorder with a full VHS tape in there, and you'd knock people unconscious if you turned your head too fast at a basketball game. Because we didn't have all of it all at once, we didn't have it in our pockets, we found our 150 people here. We found it in our neighborhoods, our elementary schools, our high schools, face to face, like Jack and Mark have been talking about. Or not Jack, sorry, Steve. But anyway, 150 people, it was right here, and we knew exactly where to look. And I'm not saying that we all knew where we belonged. Every one of you at some time in your life probably felt like an outsider. What I'm trying to say is that when we went looking for the 150 people that made us feel like we had a community, we knew where to find them. They were right here. They were local. I could walk to them. But for today's young people who've always had the internet, who've always had 500 channels of television, their world has always, from birth, been global. It's always been 6 or 7 billion people big. And in a world this large, it is infinitely more difficult to find the 150 people that make us feel like we are important. It's sort of the same phenomenon that you'll have with your closet. I want you to imagine your closet at home, because you had to go through it in order to come to this conference. If you have 2 outfits in your closet, it is very easy for you to decide what you're going to wear today. You're going to wear this or you're going to wear that. But if you have 200 outfits in your closet, it becomes a much more difficult decision. And this is the process that young people are going through, but they're going through it with trying to figure out which people, which institutions, which companies, which employers actually care about them. It's a psychological phenomenon called the poverty of choice, and what it says is the more options we are presented with, the more likely we are to choose nothing. And that is why they have a harder time connecting. It is also why, when they connect, they do it more strongly than we did. And you can see that borne out in their attachment to their friends and family over, in some cases, their employers. You can see that borne out in the United States, at least, with the proliferation of craft beer, because everybody likes to feel like their beer is local and they've met the brewer. It's the reurbanization, feeling like I can walk and be part of a physical community. Every element of what's happening in society can be traced to this need of young people to kind of drown out some of the noise and make them feel like they're important to some group of people. They're having a harder time doing it than we did because their world is a lot bigger than ours was. And it's compounded by the fact that they're staring all day long at a world that is constantly being airbrushed and photoshopped. So all day long, they see a whole group of people that seem to be richer than they are, more attractive than they are, doing more interesting things than they are doing, in more exotic locations, and they're driving nicer cars and living in bigger houses. It is the crushing pressure that comes from this global community. And it is, interestingly, like I said before, because it's harder for them to connect, when they do it more tightly than we did. And it's borne out in 2 facts about today's young workers that I don't think you're going to believe, but I promise you are true, unless the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics just makes stuff up. Today's young workers, today's 25 to 34-year-olds are, at least in the U.S., they are more loyal in terms of workplace tenure. They have been at their jobs for longer than any 25 to 34-year-old group of people since 1963, which means that today's millennials, in the U.S. at least, are more loyal than you baby boomers were when you were their age. They are also the least likely group of people to want to become entrepreneurs. Theoretically, or at least suggested, because being an entrepreneur is a lonely enterprise and they want to find a community. So the upshot of all of that for you guys is this is the world they're competing in. The world is much bigger than it used to be, and they're struggling for ways to connect. So what do you do with that? Well, for you older folks, if you have to deal with young people, if you hire them in and you want them to connect, the most important thing for you to understand is that loyalty is something that we earn and that you cannot assume. None of us are instinctively loyal to anything. Babies are not even instinctively loyal to their parents. They learn loyalty at a very young age, because their parents feed and clothe and love and protect them. But if you took a baby away from its birth parents and gave it to adoptive parents, they would be loyal to those people just like that. None of you were instinctively loyal to your spouse. You got to know them over a period of weeks or months or years before you decided to put your trust and your faith and your lifelong commitment into that person. And none of us are instinctively loyal to an employer. For those of you who've been working at your company for the last 10 or 15 years, your hard work has been proven to you, or it's been repaid to you with your company being loyal to you, giving you opportunities for advancement, going to bat for you when things have gotten bad. But for people who are just new into their jobs, they're still going through the process of deciding whether or not their hard work is going to be repaid. And because loyalty is something that we earn, the most important thing for you to do in order to earn it is to make sure you get to know your colleagues as people and not just as pieces in your machine. If you do not want them to use you as a placeholder until they find a better job, you need to let them know that you're not using them as a placeholder until you find a better, cheaper, or automated alternative. Because you're the employer, you generally need to begin this process, but once you begin this process, they will, the good ones at least, we'll talk about the bad ones in a second, but the good ones will begin the process of giving you the loyalty that you're looking for. And the nice thing about this requirement that I'm asking of you is that it doesn't cost anything. You can ask their opinion and their ideas just so that they know you value what they think, and let them know that you're listening, even when, as you will often choose to do, you go in a different direction. If you're their direct superior, ask them what they want out of their job over and above the salary and benefits that you provide. Fewer than 40% of employers ever ask this question of their employees, and I think that's a large part of the reason there's often a disconnect between what employers think is important, which is generally salary and benefits, and what employees think is important, which is generally salary, benefits, and some psychological intangible, and you're never really going to know what motivates people unless you specifically ask them. You cannot create a work ethic in lazy people, and that's what I'm going to talk about in a second. So, okay, don't worry, little baby people, your moment is coming, all right? How come I don't run this place? I've been here for 6 weeks, I'm going to tell you, all right? But you can create the culture. You can create the environment where they can look at you, they can say to themselves, these people care about me, they're offering me an opportunity to connect with them. That's something that I want very much. If you give them that opportunity, most of them will rush right into it. So that's something for you older folks. Now, for you young people, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to look at an old person. I want you to find one in the room, look at them, and I'm serious, really analyze their oldness, okay? I want you to do it. I want you to look at their, like the crow's feet and the jowly faces, the receding hair or the lack of it, just look at the thick glasses and the sadness that's right here. Just look in them. Look at them and try to see through it into the young person that they used to be, which is virtually impossible. It's very, very difficult for you to see that, isn't it? Because they've always been old. I mean, this is a picture of me, for example, from the last 5 years. I've always looked like this to you. This is all you know about me. And if you were hiring somebody based only on a photo, you might hire me because I look possibly like I know what I'm doing. I'm probably wearing pants. It looks like I can put words into orders. Maybe you would hire me. But that's not always been true of me, and it hasn't always been true of the people that you work with, because every one of the old people you work with in their basement, they have a yearbook, junior high and high school yearbook photos, and that are almost as shameful and degrading of themselves as this one is of me. Woo is right, that is me, 9th grade, 14. Who wants a piece? Nobody, exactly. I don't even know how to describe to you how many bad decisions I had to make all at the same time for you to have this to look at. I told you I had the vanilla ice haircut, which, by the way, this took me 40 minutes to do every day because that's how good I thought it looked. I was like, women love an anvil-shaped head, so let's give the ladies what they like. I'm rocking a half mullet, which is the most pathetic of haircuts. If you're going to do a mullet, right? Business on top, party in the back. But I'm like, I don't want a party. I just want a quiet get-together back there. You know what's at the bottom of that necklace? I am not making this up. It is a dragon claw holding a crystal ball. That is like 20 years before Game of Thrones maybe made that trendy. As you may already have guessed, ladies, my girlfriend was imaginary, but it is true, but I got better. I aged well, like cheese, as have all of the old people you work with, which leads me to my first important point for all of you young people. None of the old people you work with got where they are overnight. They have spent years working themselves into their current positions, if not at your company, then at some other company. In many cases, in a completely different industry, slowly learning the skill set and building the experience necessary to do the jobs that they're currently doing. I know how frustrating it is when you're young to want more than you have right now. You know, the burning need to prove yourself and the desire to move up, and you constantly feel like people are kind of making it harder on you. You can't get those opportunities without some experience behind you. And the only way that you accumulate that experience is slowly over time. And I'm not saying you're going to do it slowly because all the old people you work with did it slowly. I'm saying you're going to do it slowly because that is the way that everything that we do in this planet works. I think what's happened to you guys is this. Technology, and y'all work in technology, so you'll appreciate this, I think. Technology has accelerated the speed at which we do literally everything, except for one thing. And the one thing that our technology has not made faster and is not likely to make faster in our lifetimes is the speed at which we get good at stuff. That has in no way gotten faster. You can get knowledge to you quicker than you could before. You don't have to go to the library and wade through the Dewey Decimal System to find one book with 4 sentences that's maybe good for your book report. You have the whole internet right there in your pocket. But you can't shove it into you any faster today than you could shove knowledge into you 100 years ago. And if a skill takes, let's just say, 1,000 hours for you to get good at 50 years ago, it takes 1,000 hours for you to get good at today. Nothing that we've invented has made that process faster. And I think what's happened to some of you young people is you're so used to technology making everything else faster that you think there's some kind of magic promotion button that you can push, and then you're like, wow, and that's not how it works. Nothing on this planet works that way. You have to practice instruments if you want to get good at them. You can't pick up a football and immediately go to the NFL Combine or a soccer ball and then play in the World Cup. You have to practice video games to get good at them. You have to practice recipes to get good at them. You have to practice languages to get good at them. And I have an amazing story for you about that. I know that there's a lot of folks here from Europe and Latin America. How many of you speak Spanish? I'm not going to call on you, I promise. A lot of you speak Spanish. My wife is from Spain, so for the last several years I have been learning Spanish. And it has been made easier by the fact that a lot of words in Spanish look exactly like words in English. So ingredients, for example, is ingredientes. It's the exact same word with an extra E. So look at that. I know Spanish. The only problem with learning Spanish in that school of looks like this, so it probably means the same thing, is that some of the words that look just like English words don't actually mean the same thing. They're called false friends. So sensible, for example, which is spelled like sensible, actually means sensitive. And you'll mess a sentence up if you use it that way. And my favorite example of that, I think the Spanish speakers will appreciate this, and everything I'm about to tell you is 100% true. This is all true. Excitado, which is excited with an O on it, only means horny. That is the only kind of excited that it refers to. Ask a Spanish speaker, I am not lying. And the reason, see, you know that I'm not lying. Well, then you'll appreciate this. The reason that I know this is all true. The first time that I met her parents, I tried to tell them how excited I was to be there. So we'd been together for 4 months, all right, and we were going over to Madrid to visit her family for Christmas, and she'd been teaching me some survival Spanish, but I was learning some on the side to impress her because I'm a freaking genius. So we fly over there, and we land, and then we get off the plane, and her parents are waiting outside of security, and she breaks off, and she runs up to them, and they hug, and they're machine gun Spanishing, and I have no idea what they're saying because they talk so fast. But anyway, her dad breaks off at some point. He comes over, he's like, hola. I'm like, hola, estoy muy excitado, and he just stopped touching me and backed right up. You're supposed to say tengo ganas, if anyone wants to know, okay? Mucho gusto, encantado, tengo ganas de conocerte. Any one of those means I'm happy to meet you, not I'm so horny to be touching you, sir. It was a long flight, and you've aged well. Like, it just, they made fun of me for a week, I think. I don't actually know. They would just, talk real fast, look at me and laugh. So I'm assuming that's what they were doing. I've been speaking Spanish with my wife for 3 years now, and if you are alone and you are patient, I can have a full conversation with you in Spanish. But if it's a group of people, or if you're talking at a native Spanish speaker's normal speed, I can't keep up. That's 3 years. I'm nowhere close to being a native speaker, and every single thing we do in life functions that way. Our careers are not a different kind of experience from other experiences. They're a different experience, but they function exactly like every other experience that we've ever had. You start, you learn a little bit. You make some mistakes. You learn from those mistakes, and if you don't quit and you keep pushing, you continually move forward, but it doesn't happen fast. It moves at a slow and steady pace. There are occasional, upticks, but mostly it goes like this. So young people, if you want to have a decent relationship with all the old idiots that you are forced to share an office with, I forgot, these were the examples I wanted to share with you. How do most professional athletes become professional athletes? They train, endure injuries, and constantly analyze their past performance. They ask really nicely, like, please give me $10 million, or their parents gave them cool first names like Plaxico and DeBrickashaw, which are athletes, but that's not why they're athletes. Although it might be why I'm not one, because my name is Jeff, so I could be the kicker, maybe, right? How do most musicians become professional musicians? They write, record, practice, and tour constantly, like the Beatles, for example, who played about 1,200 shows in Germany as unknown musicians before they broke out in 1964. They live near a record shop, or they experiment with heroin. And a lot of them do that, but that's not why they're musicians. That's why they're dead people. Anyway, like I was saying, if you want to have a decent relationship with the old folks that you work with, a couple things you need to keep in mind, and the first and most important is this. You need to appreciate that advancement is a process, and that everyone you work with who has been there longer than you has been going through that process longer than you have. They are where they are because they've worked their asses off to get there. And you need to respect that experience, and you need then to consult them, to learn from them the strategies that they have typically found to be successful. Because I know that some of you are looking at retiring in the next, let's say, 5 years. And my mom retired a year ago, and I watched her go through the process of mentally preparing herself for what retirement meant. And I think the most frustrating and frightening element of retirement for my mom, and so I'm going to guess it's true for some of you as well, was the idea that all of the knowledge that she had worked decades to accumulate was going to just go away with her. She hated the notion that it was all just going to stop. She wanted very, very much to pass all that knowledge on to somebody else, someone who expressed an interest in having it. And I think it's probably true at your company as well. Those of you who are close to retiring, I don't think you want all of your knowledge to just disappear with you. I think you want it to live on beyond you. And one of the best ways to do that is to give it to somebody who shows an interest in having it. So young people, if you treat these older colleagues as assets rather than obstacles that you have to figure out how to work around, they'll actually make your career go faster than if you try to do it all by yourself. So that is hopefully something that's useful to you. And then we have one other small topic, and then we're going to wrap up so that you guys can move on to your next session. And that talks about the nature and pace of change. As we were talking about earlier, changes are happening constantly. Your acquisitions went from a yearly thing to a monthly thing. I think 4 companies got acquired since I started talking. And people have different attitudes towards change, right? So I want to start to get to this by looking at the world through another quiz. You don't have to write anything down. But if you would like to propose to a woman, which of the following things should you probably buy her in order to trick her into saying yes? A diamond ring, a Shetland pony, or an arc welder? The nice thing about this quiz, no wrong answers. There are no wrong answers. Every one of these will work. There are women who have said yes because someone gave them an arc welder, and they were like, they loved welding, they were untraditional, they wanted to weld their own rings, they did it, they said yes. And I am certain, I am positive, half of the married women in this room would have said yes if your spouse had proposed via pony. If they had come up to you on the beach here at Atlantis with a pony, and they said, this is yours if you'll be mine, half of you, you'd be like, oh my God, it's like a Nicholas Sparks book. Yes, I want a ring too, but yes, I know you would do it. However, 4,000 years of history suggests the good old-fashioned boring diamond ring is still going to do the trick. It's probably the best choice. Listen, if you go to a jewelry store and you pick out a diamond ring and you put it in a black velvet box and you go somewhere romantic and then you get down on one knee and you open the black velvet box with the diamond ring in it and you say, will you marry me? You're not doing anything original. You're not being creative. You're not overthrowing an existing and outdated paradigm. You are doing the same stupid, uncreative crap that people have been doing for 4,000 years. And the reason you're doing it is because for 4,000 years, women have continuously enjoyed sparkly rocks. Which leads me to my first important point about change management for you young people, and you are going to hate this, but it's the truth, so I don't care. The reason that all the old people you work with like doing things the way they've always done them is because the way they've always done them has generally worked, as evidenced by the fact that your company still exists. It turns out that all these old idiots actually do know what they're doing. They know what they're doing so well, in fact, that they had to hire you to keep the whole thing going. Most of the companies in the Fortune 500 got there without having a vibrant social media presence. Many of them got there without having a terribly interesting website. Some of them still don't have a good website, and I'll share my favorite example with you. And because Steve was a bean counter, I think you'll appreciate this one. This right here is Berkshire Hathaway's homepage. This is Warren Buffett's holding company's homepage. That is a turd. It is the ugliest looking homepage I have seen. I think it predates the internet. I think they found it in a cave and they built the internet around it. And if I ever met Warren, I would tell him, dude, your website's awful. And he'd be like, oh, I appreciate the criticism. I'm worth $50 billion. Think I'm doing okay. And that's a fair point. I'm not saying that things can't be made better. Obviously, you work in technologies, that they're obviously changing all the time. What I'm trying to say is that what you are doing right now represents to date the best, most intelligent thing that anybody who has ever worked there has ever come up with. So you need, young folks, to understand that your current practices and processes exist for extremely good reasons. Does not mean they can't be modernized and updated, but it does mean that unless things are spiraling into oblivion, unless you are on the verge of bankruptcy or some very, very bad outcome, you shouldn't plan to come in and overhaul anything. Overhaul is rarely a good business strategy unless things are in really, really bad shape. You should be looking to optimize, to modernize, to use what you're doing currently as a springboard for moving into the future rather than saying all of this is crap. It is very hard to get buy-in from your older colleagues when you're telling them that everything they've done up until now is crap. It's not a very good sales pitch. So you need to appreciate that what you're doing right now is very good. That said, as we all know, you can't keep doing the same thing over and over in the same way all the time, and I think this will put it into proper perspective. Oh, I forgot to mention, don't throw babies. I forgot to say, the point of all that for you old, younger folks is don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, and it works a lot better if I say that first. So anyway, but just don't throw babies, okay? You guys support cystic fibrosis. I support non-baby throwing associations, so you don't need to donate to that. Just don't throw them. Anyway, as I was saying, what you are doing right now is very good, but you have to appreciate that you can't keep doing the same thing over and over again, and this, I think, will put it in proper perspective. Netflix was founded in 1997, TiVo in 1999, iTunes in 2001, Facebook in 2004, YouTube 2005, Twitter 2006, Hulu 2007, and I can barely remember a time when these things didn't exist. I cannot remember the last time I opened a phone book, but they keep bringing it to me. Every spring, some mystical little elf just plops it on my door. Every spring, I feel like someone's saying, here, you throw this away. It's ridiculous. It's a Mitch Hedberg joke. Don't do heroin. He's dead. I see more commercials on my phone now than I do on a television, and I imagine many of you are the same way, and I'm fairly certain all of you are the same way with me here with respect to consuming things. If it does not have an easily navigable website, then as far as I'm concerned, it doesn't even exist. Now, I know that many of you older folks are sick to death of hearing that the world is changing faster than ever before. And you should be sick of that because it's not very useful knowledge all by itself. Here's what I do think is helpful. For you older people, for me, for all the Gen Xers, for everybody who really got going before the internet took hold of the entire world, the world is changing faster than it used to. For today's young people, though, the world is changing at exactly the same speed that it always has. This is their normal. It is the only pace they've ever had. It's the only speed they've ever been trained to, and that's why they like it. So when they come to you with ideas or suggestions, possibly at a faster clip than you wish they did, it does not mean that they are suggesting that what you're doing right now isn't working. What it means is that they have been trained to believe that best practices are going to change every 3 or 6 or 9 months. So just like they need to appreciate the fact that what you're doing right now is very, very good, you need to appreciate the fact that the world for us seems to be changing at a faster rhythm than it does for them. And that difference in perception can create a disconnect. If you know where the disconnect is coming from and why they are acting the way they're acting, it is far less likely to cause tension and far easier to build bridges and have communication about it. And we're going to wrap up in just a little bit. I do want to let everybody know basically the takeaways for today. Advancement for you young folks is a process. It is not a right. Every single thing that you are good at, every single thing is a result of time, dedication, and perseverance. And that includes the things that you had a natural inclination for. You need to remember that, and do not expect to get something that you don't make any concentrated effort to earn. Older folks, advancement is a process that never stops. And that's the corollary for you. If you quit learning, if you quit pushing, your career is going to stall. And it should. It's the exact same as if you went home after this conference and you saw your spouse of 23 years and you said, hey, I'm done telling you I love you. I still love you. I've just said it for 23 years. I think you know. So I'm going to save us some time. Right. Give it a shot. I'll buy you a drink when they kick you out. You can't do that. You need constant maintenance in your relationship in order for it to be successful. You need to be constantly on top of your kids if you want to parent them correctly, and you need to be constantly on top of your career as well if you don't want it to stall out. For you younger folks, existing business practices exist for extremely good reasons. Again, it does not mean they can't be modernized. It does mean that when you're having the conversation about how to innovate, where you are right now is usually the best starting point, at least to get everybody on board and interested in the conversation. Older folks, try not to interpret the questions or the ideas of your younger colleagues as an implicit attack on your ideas or authority. Some of what you're doing right now is outdated or is about to be. Some of it could be made better. That is not your fault and should not be interpreted as a weakness. That is simply a function of the fact that things change. On the change management side, we didn't talk much about this today, but some new ideas, young people, are not good ideas, and some new ideas, older folks, are excellent ideas. Which ones are which is virtually impossible to know ahead of time. You're going to have to try them out and see which ones are effective and which ones aren't. But that means everybody needs to be a part of the conversation if you want to have your best, most educated guess as you decide how to move forward. And one last one for everybody. Some things young people move slower than you wish they did, and older folks, some things move faster than you wish they did. That is not my opinion. That is a function of the way that the world operates. Career advancement happens relatively slowly, and technological advancement happens relatively quickly. Now, I didn't need you to write anything down here today, but if you do text either now or at some future date, you don't have to do it right at the moment, but you certainly can. If you text my name to this number, 66866, you will get a free PDF that has all of the takeaways from this presentation. It has some other statistics that we didn't cover in the presentation about generational issues, and it has some specific strategies about how you can get along with people who are younger than you, older than you, more or less experienced than you. My goal with this presentation is to try to simplify the generational conversation, to pull it out of this four-class model and turn it into kind of a more working dichotomy that's based on age and experience, which I think is more intuitive and hopefully easier to operate in. I want you to have this knowledge so much that I'm giving away a Kindle Fire just for downloading it. So I'm not selling you anything here, so if you will just download it, you'll be registered to win that. Also, for anybody who is interested, I know that Jack has a few of them at least. Us versus Them, the book that accompanies this presentation, goes into a lot more detail, has some more information about the Dunbar's number stuff and issues about loyalty and some other statistics you might find useful. It's also fantastic at leveling out uneven tables. So if you've got a wobbly one at home, use the book. Read it first, but then use the book. I know this was a lot of stuff. I know it's early in the morning, and I know some of you are hungover. So I know you're thinking to yourself, how can we summarize all this information? My brain only fits 140 characters. Can you please get it down to something I can digest? Yes, I can. So here you go, your one-sentence Twitter-style takeaway about generational differences at work. No matter what generation you are a part of, you do not know everything there is to know. Each generation needs the other because no one group of people has a monopoly on knowledge. And I would say that exact same thing to any two opposing groups of people. Men, you don't know everything. Women, neither do you. Always entertains me. No, that's the thing. It's like when I say men, you don't know everything, men are like, he is correct, that is right. And when I say women don't, they're like, that silly little boy. Anyway. But I mean it, you don't know everything. Nobody does. Republicans don't have all the right answers. Democrats don't have all the right answers. I know that those of you from Europe and Latin America have been overburdened with our political cycle right now, and I'm not going to really get into it except to say this, and I believe this for every country, I believe this for mine especially. If our country were run entirely at every level by uncompromising conservatives or uncompromising liberals, I don't think we'd still have a country. If you are in a relationship with anybody, a colleague, a spouse, where one of you always gets your way, you have a very bad relationship with that person. And if you think your generation is the only one whose ideas and values should be paid attention to, then your world is simply smaller than it should be. I know a lot of you were in the bar last night watching football because, American football started, I think, this week. And if you ever pay attention to people talking about football, the former champions of that, or any sport, soccer the same way, they'll always say that it's the rivalry between their arch nemesis that really pushed them to greatness, that it's the competition between equally opposing forces that really drives innovation, that really drives us to be great. So here's what I've tried to do, all right? You started with 4 generations. We blew that up. We got it down to 2. You know which one you're in. You know who the other ones are, and you know why they are the way they are. And we can still fight, all right? If you want to, that's cool. I have weapons. I got them. I went to the Atlantis thing last night. There's some rusty harpoons. I'll go get them. We'll kill each other. But I want to leave on this concept. The entire notion of free speech, which is, I think, the foundational building block of American democracy and probably of democracy all around the world. The whole notion of free speech guarantees that things are going to be messy. Because the world that we've built and operate in functions not at all the way that machines do. Machines, you can get them and set them, and you get a little bit of lubrication, a little bit of maintenance, but they can do the same operation a million times in a row, without fail. But the engine that governs our governments, our democracies, our relationships, it's one that kind of paradoxically functions best on friction. That is the promise of free speech, that everybody is going to say what they think, that not everybody is going to agree all the time, but that through all of these conversations and out of all of the chaos is going to come the next great idea and your next best way forward. You're not always going to win the conversation. You're not always going to get your way, because you shouldn't. You don't always have the best ideas. But where there's merit to your position, and there almost always is, then you will, to paraphrase Walt Whitman, contribute a verse to the great play that is our world, that is your business, and they will be better as a result of your contribution. I want to thank you guys very much for getting up this early and listening to me. I hope it's been useful. I hope you've enjoyed, and enjoy the rest of the conference. Have a wonderful time.